A very warm welcome to all our viewers and welcome to a new edition of Africa Today, our show that brings you all the latest news and events all around the African continent. And of course, today we have a very interesting topic in store for you. We will discuss the latest developments with regards to Egyptian and Indian ties as President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi arrives in the Indian capital, New Delhi, on Tuesday upon an invitation from the Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi to attend the country's Republic Day celebrations as a guest of honor. The day marks the first day India started work with its constitution in 1950. Presidential spokesperson Bassem Radi said the invitation for President el-Sisi to attend as a prime guest of honor reflects the great close ties with India and deep appreciation by New Delhi. He said it also reflects India's strong keenness to expand joint cooperation between Cairo and New Delhi, being two of the rising countries. Radi also said both sides play important roles on the regional and international stages. He said the visit to India comes 75 years since Egypt and India established diplomatic ties. Also during the visit, the president is to hold talks with Modi as well as the Indian president and a number of Indian officials, and the talks are set to discuss mechanisms to boost economic ties as well as investment opportunities in Egypt. Also in more news, India has pledged to invest $700 million in Egypt, and Indian investments currently stand at 3.15. More details in this report.
Near the end of 2022, India said it is looking forward to pumping additional investments into Egypt amounting to about $700 million in the coming few years. The statement was made by New Delhi's ambassador in Cairo. Ajit Gupta was then speaking to a meeting of Egyptian and Indian businessmen in Cairo. He said Indian investments in Egypt currently stand at $3.15 billion. He said Indian companies are implementing a number of important projects in Egypt. He invited Indian companies to invest in Egypt and benefit from the various free trade agreements concluded by Egypt with companies and regional trade blocs. He said that sectors such as pharmaceuticals, chemicals, medical devices, renewable energy projects, fertilizers, and construction equipment are potential areas that Indian companies can consider investing in to expand their presence in the world. He also invited Egyptian companies to consider investing in India, especially in the food industry, information and financial technology, engineering equipment, and auto parts.
Welcome back. We're now delighted to be joined over the telephone by our guest, Dr. Mustafa Wali, our political analyst. Dr. Mustafa? Right. Apparently, we have lost our connection with our guest, but we will try and get him back on the line to discuss the latest visit by President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi. Again, Dr. Mustafa Wali, our political analyst. Dr. Mustafa, good afternoon to you, sir. Hello, doctor. Can you hear me clearly?
Yeah, I hear you. Can you raise a little bit voice because I am outside.
Right. All right. Doctor, firstly, I'd like to thank you for joining us. And let's talk a bit about the importance of, the ties between Cairo and New Delhi as President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi arrives in the Indian capital today upon an invitation from the Indian Prime Minister.
Yeah, I can't hear well, but as far as I could manage that His Excellency President Sisi will be in a visit to India.
Yes.
Of course, that's very important because India is now celebrating. Actually, she will be the leader of the G7, maybe part of the big organization for the developing and developed countries. And with our special relations with India, whether on the economical level or on the political or on the diplomatic and historic too.
Yes.
It is one of the best relations and where we can make a lot out of it, both parties, I mean we and India.
Yes.
And thank God that all over the few years and even across a long history of cooperation, there was a lot of investment in India, a lot of interest of the Indian companies, even big companies, international companies, to deal with us in Egypt, and they have very good investment in Egypt.
Yes.
And there was always understanding, and let's not forget that it's historic. It goes back even to more than half a century, where this cooperation between Egypt on the political level, international political level, as a founder of the Third World, of the non-aligned movement.
Yes. Dr. Mustafa, you spoke about Indian-Egyptian ties as well as investment opportunities, and India has pledged to invest over $700 million in Egypt over the next few years. How do you see this announcement by the Indian government?
I welcome it, and I'm deeply impressed with it, and inshallah it will be materialized on the ground, because frankly speaking, those who are familiar with the current Indian investment in Egypt, they are handling the tough industries, the big industries, petrochemical industries, and even, electrical appliances, and a lot of important top quality and top products for us, in Egypt, to get into cooperation, where India is making the best out of it. From its investment in Egypt, being, we are the entrance to the African market. And if you talk to any Indian company working around Egypt, they might have some problems, but absolutely, in the end, they are very happy with investing in it. And that's, to us, very important and very vital.
Yes, indeed. Doctor, over 50 Indian companies are already investing a total of $3.15 billion in Egypt at the moment. How does this amount tell about Indian investments in Egypt, and what areas is there further potential for investment in?
Well, there are some traditional Indian, what we can call, where we have a competitive edge even on the international level. For example, petrochemicals, which is actually a huge industry and diversified. And meanwhile, the products of such industries are vital for a lot of downstream industries, as we call it. In this case, there we have many names. Few, of course, there are few names in the world actually to be working in that field generally. India is taking a very advanced position, internationally, and such big names, international names, companies' names, international companies' names, are working in Egypt and working for quite some time now, and working properly and looking for even increasing their contribution in the investment in Egypt.
Indeed. Tell me, Dr. Mustafa, in your opinion, how can India, make use of the location?
Sorry, I can't hear. Could you raise a little bit? I'm sorry, because I'm on the move, yeah?
Yes, sorry,
Hello?
Doctor. Yes, Doctor, can you hear me now?
If you can a bit more, if you can.
Yes, I was asking you, Doctor, how can India use Egypt's positioning, whether in the African continent, as a gateway to other African nations, as well as close to Asian neighbors, as well as Europe? How can India make use of Egypt's very unique geographical positioning?
The Indian trend, which I personally had the pleasure of dealing with them for quite some time when I was taking in this position in the Federation of Egyptian Industries. They are very familiar with the importance, and they're very sure, they are acquainted with the importance of the Egypt geographical location, especially when it comes to developing countries in Africa and the demand for a lot of products where if it is manufactured or produced in Egypt, it will decrease the cost even to get a very good competitive edge for the Indian products compared to those who are exported from Europe or from Asia. They are very familiar with this. This was actually one of the main advantage, which attractive points were in their investment in India, investing in Egypt.
Yes. Now we've seen statements by the Indian ambassador to Egypt that have also invited Egyptian companies to invest in India. What fields do you see can draw Egyptian investments in India as well?
Did you mention Egyptian companies investing in India?
Yes.
Yeah. Well, I'm not familiar with this, so far, but Why not? Why not? Because such integration, because there is a competitive edge, for example, for this Egyptian company to have its investment in Egypt, in India, because in return this will get back positively on our, you know, what you call macro economy.
Yes.
That happens, and even India is doing this with many, you know. India, while they are investing in a lot of Asian companies, of course in Asia and Africa, they have their interest in Europe and their joint ventures in Europe.
Indeed. Right. Dr. Mustafa, let's talk a bit about investment opportunities in Egypt. How do you see the different laws and regulations that have been put in place, the one-stop shops, and new legislation to ease, you know, the environment for investors?
You mentioned one-stop shop.
Yes.
That's very important concept, and it should be materialized. It should be felt. It should be there all the time, which means that any problem which can be solved or should be solved in advance without delaying the process of investment, from establishing the company, an investment company, or even in whatever comes after this, you know, manufacturing, the requirement, you know, labor force, and facilitating, you know, the import of the raw materials is required. All what is related to the industry in general should be maximizing. We should be maximizing every positive step from our side. That will convince more and more investment. And I don't want to get into details because we are familiar, we all know, and it's the best, and it happened even in some countries like us before. So let's always try immediately and always try be ahead or in advance before the problems are there, discussing it, trying to solve it, even in advance. And I'm optimistic that lately I feel there are a lot of efforts in this direction.
Yes, indeed. Doctor, let me also ask you another important question. In light of the global challenges, you know, the global economic setbacks as a result of the Russian-Ukrainian war, as well as the post-COVID era, which has strained a lot of countries economically all around the world, how important is it to diversify our investment partners, not just depend on a certain country or a certain investment opportunity? How important is this in this current phase, Doctor?
Yeah, well, for sure, now we have witnessed that reliance on a certain supply for certain commodity, especially if it is, you know, of priority, things can get worse for the importing part. But in general, we can, as Egypt, we can really try as much as we can.
إذا مشاهدينا الكرام نتابع مع حضراتكم مراسم الاستقبال الشعبية لدى وصول الرئيس عبد الفتاح السيسي إلى العاصمة الهندية نيودلهي، وهذه صور مباشرة لمراسم الاستقبال الشعبية للرئيس السيسي عند وصوله إلى مطار نيودلهي، إلى مطار غاندي بالعاصمة الهندية نيودلهي. يذكر أن الرئيس السيسي قد توجه بالفعل إلى عاصمة الهند تلبية لدعوة من رئيس الوزراء الهندي ناريندرا مودي للمشاركة كضيف شرف في احتفالات الهند بيوم الجمهورية، والذي يوافق 26 من يناير من كل عام. إذا وهي مناسبة وطنية كبرى تدعو إليها الهند كل عام رئيس دولة من الدول التي تربطها بالهند علاقة وثيقة وقوية.
As we see, dear viewers, arrived in the Indian capital New Delhi on Tuesday upon an invitation from Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi to attend the country's Republic Day